Good evening. We're glad to be here tonight with you to open up a conversation that does not happen enough on campuses or among people who act to stop the wars and the domination of the U.S. empire. This may be the first time such a conversation is asking, what is the alternative to deadly U.S. empire and repressive Islamic fundamentalism, its opponent in a large and strategic part of the world? We are here tonight with our thoughts on the whole planet and humanity in mind. My name is Deborah Sweet. I'm the director of World Can't Wait, one of the sponsors of tonight's discussion, which I'll be moderating. Our co-sponsor is the Platypus Affiliated Society. We would really like to thank their chapter here at the New School for hosting this event. And I deeply appreciate these 5 thinkers who have responded to the invitation to this urgent exchange. The heart of this engagement tonight will be the exchange between the speakers. Each of them is going to speak for 10 minutes to the question, if you are troubled about the state and direction of the world, if you are repelled by both the arrogant assertion of empire by the government and leaders of the United States and the fanatical backwardness of Islamic fundamentalism, what should you be doing? We'll begin the exchange with each speaker taking about 3 minutes to respond to what the other speakers have said or to emphasize a point they want to make. And then I'll be inviting the audience to come in with your questions. I'd just like to take a moment to remind everybody to put your cell phones on vibrate or silent. And again, thank you very much for being here. The first presenter tonight is Sinan Antoon, who many of you know from New York University, where he teaches Arabic literature. He has a very active literary and political life, and he is the author of this book of poems, Baghdad Blues, which came out in Arabic and then English. He's translated the poet Mahmoud Darwish, and I believe there's another book of his coming out in English this year that Sinan translated. So this is someone very involved in all of the questions that we're going to be talking about tonight, and we're very happy to have him here. Sinan?
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you all. Thank you for this opportunity. 10 minutes doesn't allow one to say much. I have to speak a little bit about the premise of the discussion, this idea of the U.S. empire and Islamic fundamentalism and its backwardness. And I don't want to be too personal, but this is coming from someone who's an atheist and a secular and from a Christian family. So I would love to live in a world where public space is secular. And of course, the problem of fundamentalism exists and has existed, but I think it's really high time for us to shed all the baggage that we have inherited from 9/11 and from the Bush administration, which of course has conveniently used terrorism and 9/11 to create this monster that is called Islamic fundamentalism. Why should we shed this? Because there are more important issues for us as citizens here and in the world, and because the recent months and the recent events in the Middle East have really, or should really, force all of us to kind of completely rethink the dominant discourse that was operative. Because frankly speaking, whichever way you look at it, it's impossible to make an equivalence between the U.S. empire and Islamic fundamentalism. Islamic fundamentalism doesn't have troops in 154 countries. Islamic fundamentalism doesn't spend billions and billions of dollars propping up dictators all over the world. And I can go on forever. Have people been killed, have lives been lost because of Islamic fundamentalism and terrorism? Yes, of course. But even if you use the loss of human life, as I sometimes say in my courses when we discuss Islam and violence and all of that, Islamic fundamentalism has to work much harder and accelerate its pace to catch up with the violence perpetrated by secular European powers. So, what can we learn, or what I think we have all learned from the recent events in the Middle East, is that it's a lesson to learn for us as citizens, because I'm sure most of you are here or because you are frustrated, because obviously there's something really wrong. And here where we live in open democratic societies, we don't seem to be able to translate our frustration and our anger and our grievances into a functioning political movement that actually changes the status quo. Even after all the euphoria with Obama, in a way, now we go back and not much has changed from the Bush years. What does one learn from what happened in the Middle East? I mean, these are very tough dictatorships where it's very difficult to exercise one's freedom of speech and to demonstrate. People risk their lives. But people in very difficult circumstances practiced their right as citizens and organized and mobilized on a grassroots level and translated their grievances and their frustrations into a political movement. There is something for us to learn here from all of this, in that it is actually also the youth and the students. I mean, it was across all facets and sectors of society, but it's that moment of empowerment when the young realize, or when large numbers of people on the ground realize the potential and the power that they have if they were to organize and come together. Going back to the Islamic fundamentalism, because what is important is to realize what global capitalism is doing to our world, and how that is the major problem that I think we should focus on its deleterious effects, and not Islamic fundamentalism. Again, we can't go into that, but that too has its own genealogy, and it's a product of recent years. And frankly speaking, the US and its allies in the Middle East, such as Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, have had a huge hand in creating this huge monster, or at least creating the conditions to make this thing called Islamic fundamentalism become a big monster. And history is very important here. If you want to understand the explanation or the understanding of how we got this monster, or how we got Al-Qaeda and all of its mutations, is to go back and look at the Cold War, and look at the invasion of Afghanistan, and look at what our, meaning the US priorities, were back then. You know, always looking for short-term goals and then sacrificing long-term goals and creating problems. So that's why I find the whole parity between Islamic fundamentalism and US empire very problematic. And now I'm told that I'm running out of time. So what amazes me, frankly, is, now I'll get personal and contradict myself, but having lived under Saddam Hussein, where there was a dictatorship, just as we have now in Syria, where we could not do anything, we could not organize. Everything was already prescribed for us by dictatorship and by the regime. And then I come to the United States, and I go to graduate school here, and I'm amazed because students have theoretically the freedom to organize and to be political, and citizens as well, frankly. But the problem is that most of us, not all of us, but most of us have a problematic conception of what it means to be a citizen. Or we think that being a citizen means you just, vote once every 4 years and so on and so forth. So I guess perhaps I don't have all the answers, but one way is to think of oneself as a democracy machine, to quote Chomsky, to realize the power that we have each as citizens, and to become active and proactive citizens rather than passive citizens. So I'm always amazed about how all the potential and all the rights that we have as citizens in an open society, where we do have a lot of rights, but most of us do not really exercise those rights, and thus we always end up with this frustration of the political system actually being dysfunctional. And the situation is really horrible, I think, on all fronts, if you look at it statistically. And now, again, we're beyond the euphoria, and now reality hits in. So what I think should happen is the realization, and because we really are running out of time, people always say we're running out of time, but I think now we're really running out of time globally, not only just in the US because of all the problems and because of global warming and everything, but this is the time to really take charge of one's political life and one's potential and to organize, especially on a grassroots level, but especially in universities and especially with the young, the students. And now I'm sounding like an older person. I will stop here and we'll leave the rest to the discussion. Thank you.